2 days ago, I talked about the goal, the objective of this Vipassana meditation, the final objective. So the final objective of this Vipassana meditation is the realization of Nibbana. Realization of Nibbana means that one comes to the end, or will come to the end, to this cycle of birth and rebirth. In other words, there will be the rebirth will not occur anymore when it comes to the last life. So, in other words, that's the only way that we can get out of this cycle of birth and rebirth. So if we know how to hold on, to keep that objective clear, to keep that goal clear to us, then when it comes to this practice, you have the power, you have the motivation to go forward, especially when the times and challenges arises in the practice. What sort of challenges? Old age is one challenge, right? Big challenge as you grow older. During the interview, a lot of you, are trying. But when it comes to, as we grow older, you see that the difficulties of practice arises. Even for me, when I was practicing in the early 20s, it's like it's just like a bulldoze through everything, no problem. Tired, yes, but the next day you have the energy. Now, even not as old as you all yet, but I find that the energy is really dropping. You don't have all the push, but you are more wiser. More wiser than the early days, wiser in the sense that because of the experience of keep doing it again and again, so you get wise up. So the same thing as we practice this meditation. So one of the biggest challenges is the old age. Another also a big challenge is the sickness that comes in. So sometimes old age and sickness goes together, one way or another, one kind or another. Sickness, it can be a major sickness, it can be a minor sickness, it can be aches here, pain here, tiredness here, rheumatoid here, what else? High blood pressure here. These type of things, it makes the whole mind or body becomes difficult. So these are some of the challenges that we have to go through. And if our faith, our confidence is soft, and the confidence is like wobbly type of confidence, then all these things, when it comes in, then you do not want to go on anymore. You thought that it's better for me to go and rest, it's for me to get out of this meditation. You have all kinds of excuse not to do the meditation. Of course, there will be once in a while, there will be life-threatening one. We understood that. That one, perhaps you need to stop. But there are times it is not as big as you think, but our mind expand it, embellish it, until our doubts all arises. So if our goal is not clear, if the goal of this Vipassana is not clear, then when these things arises, it's very easy for us to stop the meditation. Very easy. What more? There will be like duties, family duties, for example. there will be certain responsibility. Or maybe if you are younger, you may have a career, you may have a job for you to think about. Uh, Even though for you all to come here, for those especially who are working, to come here to take a 2 weeks leave, more or less your leave for the whole year is up, finished. Maybe, yeah. So, so it's all these are challenges. Hmm? If you want to have all the time to meditate, then join me. Be a monk or be a nun. I give you the ropes and the shaving blade. But come to think of it, actually, the whole purpose of the Sangha set up by the Buddha is for the purpose of you have the time. You don't have to worry about food, don't have to worry about shelter, you don't have to worry about clothing, you don't have to worry about medical stuff. You don't have to worry about so many other things like that you're worrying about. You have to think about all these things constantly. For us, we don't have to do that. So we have the time. So the time is finally it's up to you what you want to do with it. But in reality, in the everyday world, even not many monks or many nuns wants to get out of the samsara. Not many of them. They still want to be in the cycle of birth and rebirth. Sometimes they tell them, conceptually, yes, but in the heart, no. Deep in the heart, no. Because it's not easy. This practice is not easy. Many monks have practiced this method. This method has been done for 60, 70 years since Mahasi Sayadaw. So many monks and so many nuns gave up on this practice. They gave up because it's so difficult. Difficult because perhaps technique, the technique they do not know what to do, do not know how to do. A lot of time, for example, people thought that this walking meditation is just right step, left step, right step, left step, lifting, dropping, and that's about it. If you do like that, sooner or later, there's nothing for you to note, nothing clear. I will give up on it. Normally when you give up, you'll find something easier, less pain, more calm, not so long hours of meditation, more easier. Don't have to note. Yeah? You don't have to put in so much effort. That's most of even the monks or nuns want this practice, this type of practice. So firstly, the goal is not clear. When the goal is not clear, how you motivate yourself also is not that strong. It's not that strong, it's not that powerful, it's not consistent, and when the challenges comes in, they will falter. Also, I thought about other worldly goals. Most of the time, where yogis or even monks or nuns they are practicing, to a lot of them they want that worldly goal rather than the final goal. So the worldly goal here, it can be like if those who are practicing, they like all kinds of spiritual powers, psychic power, mind reading, creating, disappearing, these type of things that's mentioned in the Buddhist text. Or they have or sometimes they have for nowadays also they use this meditation in order to de-stress themselves, in order to overcome certain diseases, certain illness, and and a lot of things. Nowadays, especially when you're out there, make sure we are not too distracted by the worldly ways of meditation. They're very popular right now. They're very popular, even among the Buddhists, among devotees, even among sometimes practitioners. They talk about these things, they praise this way of mindfulness in order to bring this mindfulness to the worldly for everyday happiness, all kinds of happiness. Not to say that it's bad. I'm not saying that it's bad, but I'm saying that you must learn how to differentiate them. There are worldly goals for it, and there are noble goals. Uh, when people, for example, even like sometimes, not all the time, I tell everybody, "Hey, nibbana, huh? Nibbana." They weren't able to get it. Uh, Not many people will get it, all these things. Even I sit here, I talk to some of you, a lot of you are just a lot of question mark in the face. May not be that yet, but sometimes worldly goals we tell them too that yes, some of this meditation will reach there, will have some happiness in our worldly everyday life. Because they are not ready for all the nibbana thing. They don't want to hear all those things. But it's better to have mindfulness than no mindfulness. Yeah? At least the mind has that some degree of mindfulness there. It's better actually for themselves, for the people around them, for the world. They become less violent. People become more clearer, more gentle, more happier. That's good. Uh, so this you have to keep in mind. It comes with understanding of the teachings of the Buddha in terms of the theory or the intellectual theory. That means, in other words, you have to learn, read about the teachings of the Buddha and to keep the goal clear or right in front of you. Now, tonight, I want to talk about something. I want to go into a little bit more detail on some of the things that you are doing, especially in the meditation, especially in the walking meditation, or even in the sitting meditation. Now, in theory, and also in practice. Now, in theory, when we look at walking meditation and sitting meditation, we can divide the objects into what we call a primary object and a secondary objects. Primary objects and secondary objects. So too in the sitting meditation, there are primary objects and secondary objects. It's good for us, especially for beginners, to understand this. What is primary object and what is secondary objects? In Vipassana, we have multitude of objects, many objects. In Samatha meditation, there's only one primary object, there's no secondary object. Okay, you only take up one object. That's why, as I said, a lot of us, when we come from a Samatha background, and you try to adopt that Samatha into Vipassana, then you can go wrong. Because you only think that, every meditation has only one object only. No. As I said, that is not the way of how Vipassana is developed. Even the Buddha says that there are 4 foundations of mindfulness. Generally, there are 4 different types of object. Or groups of objects, 4 different groups of objects. So, when you say primary and secondary objects, they are all equally important. They are all equally important whenever they are predominant. Whenever they are predominant. Other words, let's say if now the primary object is the obvious one, then you don't have to bother about the secondary object. You leave it at the background. If the secondary object becomes the obvious one, becomes the predominant one, then the secondary object, you don't worry about it, you put it at the background. Okay? The principle is this. That means whenever they are prominent, they are the most important one. And we have to keep that in mind, that principle. Walking meditation. What is the primary object and what is the secondary objects? The primary object is your movement of your leg. Movement here means your right step, left step, first phase, lifting, dropping, two phase, lifting, pushing, dropping, three phase. But there are also in other texts, in sometimes other teachers also, they teach you there are four phase. Lifting, pushing, threading, stepping, touching, five phase already. Then after you got six phase, you got seven phase, eight phase, nine phase. How many? What? But it's not about how many phases that you go. Yeah? The phases here, again, they are all concept. Yeah, the phases is actually what you think it is. But what is important is that how much you pay attention to the movement. That is the most important thing. Not how many phases that you go. But slower the better. So even the Mahasi Sayadaw, the one that developed this technique, it says you do three phases is enough actually. Now, go back to the primary again. So the primary here, we talk a lot about it during various days. They talk about there are right step, left step, lifting, dropping, lifting, pushing, dropping. In order for you to notice them clearer, sometimes you notice in the walking, in the pressing, hard, soft, maybe the movement itself you can notice. Then when it's like lifting, pushing, touching, you find that there's a pulling here, pressing there. Everything is like happening around the feet area. Okay? That is all what we call the primary objects. Or the primary object. Here is objects, but it all occur below your ankle. Below the ankle, and all the movements and all the pressure and all the tightness and all the vibration, whatever is happening there, that's called within the primary object of the walking meditation. Okay? That one, you have been doing it day in, day out, day in, day out. And also by now, also maybe I think you get bored also. Same thing, lift, walk up, walk down, same thing. Yeah. Now, also important, as I said, that you also have to notice the secondary objects of the walking meditation. Yeah? The secondary objects. Secondary objects here is all the object that is above the ankle. Above the ankle all the way to the head. Including your hands, your hips, your buttock, your legs, your knees, all these things. All the upper part of the body. Those two you can use as your object of your meditation. Whenever your lifting, pushing, or right step, left step is not clear to you, or things get bored, or you are not noticing it clearly anymore, or perhaps maybe during the walking there's a lot of thinking. Why? Because there's nothing much to see here in the walking, right? So what do? So what you can do is that you shift your attention to the upper part of the body. So upper part of the body, yeah. Take for example, you're doing one face walking meditation. You do a right step, left step, right step, left step, right step, and you notice that during in the right step, left step, there's nothing much for you to see. It's only walking only. So what you do is that at the same speed, you take notice of the upper part of the whole body, and notice them how the movement of, let's say, your hips are moving, or your shoulders is moving, and you walk. Just walk naturally. Yeah? And just walk naturally, you're noticing how it's moving. Sometimes you may find that you are slanting to maybe to the left. And if you don't realize it, when it's slanting to the left, your job is not to straighten it back, no. Your job is to see it as they are. Because it's just slightly slanted in it. Yeah? And your job is not to go and disturb the whole thing. Your job is just to see that. If it's just slanted a little bit, you know that it's that way. Or maybe when you right step, left step, you find that your one leg, it's heavier than the other leg. Then in that sense, you walk and you accept it as it is and you observe it as it is. Don't go and shake your leg away and make them the same. Yeah. You don't like that heaviness. How come this leg more heavy than the other? What's wrong with my leg? There's nothing wrong with your leg. It's wrong with your mind. Huh? You understand what I mean? So don't go and disturb your walking. You are an observer of what is happening. So one leg may be a bit heavier, one leg a bit lighter. So you walk in that way. You walk in that way. So you observe its movement in that way. Then that is becomes your noticing the secondary object of the walking meditation. Now, here, understanding of this walking meditation, you expand more objects for you to see. Therefore, it makes walking meditation even more interesting. Yeah? So you learn to discover for yourself. For example, if you notice the hips, yeah? Maybe you notice the hips are more obvious at this time. So while you're walking and notice the hips, maybe the hips are sort of like pushing one side, maybe. Maybe it was pushing one side. Then you know that is how you walk. So go on the same speed. So try to notice it, what is going on there. Notice sometimes your hands can be cold, can be warm, and also at the same time, try not to move your hand too much during in the walking. Not one row, then you put like that. Then after that you put down. After that you put at the back. After that you put in the pocket. After that you put up again. Keep your hands still. Yeah, all these are small things, but actually they are important. Yeah. So try it as best as possible. Just keep your hands at one go. Yeah. As best as you can. Sometimes when your mind is alert, very clear, you may realize that the whole hour you have not moved your hand. Yeah, it's quite possible also. So you notice the upper part of the body. Yeah, you notice how you walk. You notice sometimes when you're walking, secondary objects like hearing, for example, you hear something, then you're not hearing. Then sometimes you notice there's a desire, you want to see who coming in. Then you watch desire. Then you'll see that the eyes don't go and see that. The mind knows somebody is coming in, but you watch that desire, it doesn't go and look at it. It kind of like keep the mind steady, and after that, continue with the walking. You see, you're noticing the secondary objects more carefully. Yeah, you are catching hold of that secondary objects more clearly for you to see. If not, our habit is some noise. What do? Somebody come in, then we'll take a look at them. Uh, we'll take a look at them. All these things, small things, but it breaks your continuity of that mindfulness. So you got to be careful. Just take note of what is going. Just take note of those seeing also the secondary objects or the hearing too. Yeah. Uh, what about thinking? Well, what about thinking that comes in? Thoughts that's coming in. You see, sometimes when you're walking, you right step, right step, or lifting, pushing, suddenly you want to fall. All right. Why? Because one of the main reason is the thoughts that come in somewhere in the middle, right? That you sort of like you fall off. Then here also, it's good that you take note of that thoughts also. That wobbling part, that means somehow let's say you walk, and then your leg suddenly goes to the right and you try to stabilize the whole body. You should use that as your meditation object too. Not just, oh, cannot, must come back again, huh? Make sure I'm straight again. No, not yet. Just stay like that. Stay as the leg. Then hold on for a while. Be aware of the whole body. Be aware of whole body. Be aware of the thoughts, because these thoughts are just passing through. If passing through is gone, your whole body is stable again. And then from there, be mindful, be alert. Then make an intention. Continue lifting, pushing, dropping. Then there's no like breaking that mindfulness. There's always the mindfulness remains in its continuity. So every time you wobble a little bit, every time you are not steady during in that walking, that not steadiness is your meditation object. Is your notice. You have to notice it, that how the leg is slightly spread apart, how the body is not stable. You notice everything. Huh? Y'all do that? No, y'all don't do that. Y'all will just, okay, let's start again. Okay, let's start fresh. Lifting, pushing, dropping. Uh, of course, that also can do. Yeah? I'm not saying, but there are better way. The better way is that a lot of us, we wobble. Sometimes I walk also, I wobble. Not that I don't. It's sometimes that you walk, then suddenly the thoughts just passing through, the whole body becomes imbalanced, the leg become imbalanced. But we take note of that imbalance of that leg. We pay attention to it, how it imbalance. Then after that, we continue again as the thoughts pass through. Now, after a number of days here, sometimes when you're walking, lifting, pushing, dropping, and there will be thoughts that's coming in and it stays quite long. It doesn't come in and not all the time it comes and then it passes, it comes and passes. Sometimes it comes, it stays, and it goes repeat again and again and again. Now, if you know this type of thoughts, occurring, then you should stop. You stop for a while. Then this time you take note of this secondary object of thinking. Planning, thinking. Then noticing, or restless. Then after that, if they all disappear, as I said, don't go into the story. You come back to the body again, then continue with the lifting, pushing, dropping. Huh? Mm. So that will be good for you. Take note of the thoughts also, because now you begin to incorporate the thinking. Slowly you incorporate the thinking into the process of your walking meditation, the secondary objects. In the beginning of the practice, in the first few days, we try not to do that because mindfulness is not that continuous, not that strong. But maybe after a number of days, our mind tends to become more clear, to becomes clearer, to becomes more continuous. In that sense, the mindfulness become continuous. Then it'd be good that to take note of the thoughts too. Uh, so that's good. Yeah. So you notice the secondary objects, the movement of the body, the upper part of the body. Then after some time, you will find that the sensation of the lifting, pushing, dropping, or the right step, left step becomes clear again. What you should do? What you should do? Then go back to the primary object because they are obvious again. Huh? They come back to this one. Then after that you are walking and things are not clear. Then go back. Then go to the secondary objects again. In other words, your noting mind has to be flexible. Has to be flexible. Has to be constantly looking for some clear objects for you to notice. In the mindfulness, in the talk of mindfulness, I mentioned that the arousing of that mindfulness, the arising of the mindfulness is when there is a clear object for you. Clear object comes in, mindfulness also comes in. If there's no clear object, you get bored. That means the object is not clear to you. Your mind is not really noticing what is going on. That means the mind is not clear to you. So in other words, you got to look for other clear objects in order for you to continue that mindfulness. So primary objects and the secondary objects. Also, I got to remind you all that this intention also concerning with that walking meditation. If you were to do it by now in your walking or in your daily activities, you will see that it is very helpful to keep the mind there and to make the mind continuous. If those who are not doing it, then you will see that there's not much. Sometimes the mindfulness is not being prolonged. We could see that. After interview for a few days, we already knowing what is going on already. So this is one of the things on the walking meditation. So try to keep your walking meditation to 1 hour. 1 hour means including going to the toilet also. That means you can do the walking meditation while you're already on the way to the toilet and on the way to come back. Watch the legs, watch the upper part of the body, and so on. That is one thing that y'all should do. Now, when it comes to the primary objects and the secondary objects of the sitting meditation, now, primary object and secondary objects of the sitting meditation, then the primary objects that what we do over here is the rising and falling. Now, other form of meditation, sometimes they use the primary object as the in-breath, out-breath at the nostril area. But we take up the rising and falling. Now, between this nostril object, at the in-breath, out-breath at the nostril, and at the tummy over here, at the abdomen over here, there are so all the years I've seen, there are some advantage and disadvantage between these two. One of the advantages of this in-breath, out-breath is that in the beginning, if you practice using in-breath, out-breath, it's easier for you to follow the in-breath, out-breath. You can capture the in-breath, out-breath easier compared to a rising and falling for a beginner. But then, the disadvantages of that in-breath, out-breath is that after some time, it fades away. And it becomes very calm, then nothing much there, very fair. Then for most of the time, the yogi will just stay there, nice. That is one of the disadvantage of the in-breath, out-breath. It stays there, it kind of like, by nature, it becomes subtle. It becomes subtle, it becomes faint, and then if the yogi is the mindfulness is not strong, it cannot able to see the changes that is happening in the in-breath and out-breath. You cannot see whether it's fast, whether it's long, whether it's one side is longer, or the other side is shorter, one side is warmer, the other side is cooler, one is faster, one is slower. There are variation in the in-breath, out-breath too. So in the beginning part, it is good to see, but after some time, very difficult to tell the yogi to come out from it, because they like that calmness, that blissfulness. So this is the disadvantage of that thing. Because again, because due to its calmness, also that calmness, that by nature it's calming, the in-breath, out-breath, that is helpful in the sense that it can calm the restless mind. It calms the restless mind better in a sense, but for the beginning part of it. So it has that advantage of thing, but the problem is it does not sustain long. It's hard for it to sustain, hard for yogis to sustain the in-breath, out-breath long, unless they do the walking meditation thoroughly. Now, come to the rising, falling as a primary object. Rising and falling as a primary object, then it's kind of like opposite of the breath, the in-breath, out-breath. Sometimes when you're reporting, you got to define it exactly. Sometimes people like to use breath with the tummy, whereas in the practice, breath is breath, tummy is tummy, the rising and falling is the abdomen, rising and falling abdomen, or the stomach here. That's not the same as breath, but physiologically we thought that all is connected. Just to remind you all, the air doesn't go to the stomach, the air don't reach the lungs. It go to the stomach, you die already. It's only a contraction of a movement in the stomach. There's a muscle here, but there's no air. But why do we call it air element? Air element because it's movement, not air. It's movement. Its movement equates to air element in the Buddhist understanding, in the Buddhist tradition. Movement. So movement is in the breath, is movement. Is rising and falling, is movement. Lifting, pushing, dropping is movement. That is called air element. But usually I don't want to use the word air element. I want to use the word exactly. Yeah. So don't come into the interview room, Bhante, I notice my air element. What are you noticing? Which one are you talking about? You got to define it carefully. Either you're noticing the breath, or you're noticing your rising and falling, or you're noticing your movement. Something is moving. Don't try to be smart. I'm a little bit smarter than you. So you got to define it carefully. Well, okay, I'm watching the rising and falling. So now the beginning of the for a yogi to begin with this rising and falling. One of the things which is disadvantage in terms of rising and falling is that it's not easy for beginners to notice this rising and falling. You got to put your hand, you got to put a towel here, you got to put a pillow here in order just to feel the stomach. Huh? It's neither you, whether you're fat or whether you're thin, you still cannot feel. Uh, because you're not used to it, one thing. We are not used to it. And secondly, is that this rising and falling, uh, it's not easy for us to notice for a beginner. But if they keep on trying, this is where trying in the walking and the sitting day after day, that what you do over here, slowly and slowly, you will begin to notice the movement uh, clearly. Not to say that clear, but the clarity that of the noticing of that rising and falling becomes slightly longer. Maybe in the beginning you can notice only few minutes, but this time you can notice it 10 minutes. You're getting more, more times that you can able to notice that primary object. So it takes some days. It takes some days for us to notice this rising and falling. And all of us actually have rising and falling. But some people in the beginning part, they find that it's difficult for them to notice this part. So a lot of time they want to revert to the in-breath, out-breath because it's obvious in the beginning. So, but after that, if you can able to notice this rising and falling, after some time, this rising and falling stays with you for a longer period of time. And then because of its staying power, and due to its nature comparative to in-breath, out-breath, the rising and falling is more gross. That means it's bigger object compared to an in-breath, out-breath. So because of it's a bigger object, it's an easier object for you to sustain for a longer period of time. It becomes clear for a longer period of time. Of course, if you don't put much effort into it, also things will fade away. But it's easier for you to stay with it. Therefore, when you can stay with it, other words, the progress comes in better. Yeah, the process, because of you can able to notice what is going on with the rising and falling. So therefore, as I said, the primary object itself, there's advantages and disadvantages. Then some of us may think, why don't we do two together? Cannot, not easy. One object you already one object you already can't catch hold of it. You want to catch both objects. Not easy. So you have to learn to take one first. But then make sure, although we're doing this rising and falling of the abdomen as a primary object, don't neglect the in-breath, out-breath. Sooner or later, you will have to use this in-breath, out-breath too. Sooner or later. But in the meantime, while we are taking this rising and falling as a primary object, then in-breath, out-breath is the secondary object. Pain is a secondary object. Tightness of this one, itchiness is secondary object. Thinking is secondary object. But nevertheless, these secondary objects, they are also important. They are also, you need the skills for you to pay attention to them. Now, the rising and falling, Here is you keep noticing this rising and falling in the sense that you label them. You label them, and the labeling is very helpful for the beginner and even for sometimes for even advanced meditator also. Yeah? In the beginning part, we use this labeling to keep directing the mind onto the rising and falling. Yeah? Now, if you understand the Buddhist teachings, there's what we call the Vitakka and Vichara, There's one part of it. This has to do with your labeling process and how you direct the mind onto the object. But I'm not going to go into this thing too much. If you're familiar with Buddhist terms, you're familiar with some Abhidhamma, familiar with the suttas, perhaps you may understand. So you need to direct the mind. In order to direct the mind, we use this labeling to help us again and again, whether it's in the walking, sitting, or the daily activities. We use this labeling to help us. Sometimes I do that too. After some time, also I bring that labeling just to start the engine, so to speak. Start the engine. But after some time, this labeling itself are still concept. They are construct of the mind. I mean, the labeling, you can use English or you can use Mandarin. You can use Sri Lankan, you can use whatever word you want to use. You can use Vietnamese also if you want. You can use Klingon also if you want. You know what's Klingon? Star Trek lah, Klingon. You can use any word you want. It's all because the whole thing is not about the word, it's about directing the mind towards it. So any words you want to use, it's not a problem. Now, so the beginning part we use this labeling, and it's good that for a beginner you're not being used to this one, or you may think that your mind is still a lot of running here and there, then the labeling is very helpful. But sooner or later, as you progress, this labeling also will begin to drop them away. Because the mind is very used to the noting of the object. In the further development, this labeling, if you keep on using this labeling, it becomes a hindrance to your practice. It becomes a hindrance in the sense that while things are going quite fast, it's changing and so on, the rising and falling is changing in many ways. You got no time to go and label it. You got no time to, let's think, how should I report for tomorrow's interview? You got no time for those things. Sometimes you watch it, you kind of like forget about it because new things are keep on coming in. Things are changing quite fast. But in the beginning of this one, things are more like monotonous. Yeah, looks the same, rising, falling, rising, falling. This one a little bit longer. This one a bit shorter. This a bit tighter. Not so tight. You can able to remember more or less, But as you get further into it, sometimes there are variations of this rising and falling comes in more dramatic, more powerful, more clearer, and what I mean, there's a lot of things that's happening there. So in other words, you don't have the time even for you to label. So you only see things as they really are. You only see things as they really are. Even for that, it doesn't sustain all the time, because after some time that mindfulness sometimes it drop a little bit. Somewhere drop, and then the body feels a bit tired, sleepy. Then you bring back the labeling again, in order to note it and then to arouse, to energize the mind again. Yeah. So the labeling, you must regard this as a tool, as a tool. But it's so important for beginner to use those labeling. Again and again, we have seen yogis use this labeling. It's very helpful to keep the mind in the present moment. It helps them to be here. Uh, Now, even in the lifting, pushing, dropping, we say one phase, two phase, three phase. Those are also concept, actually, finally, What is important, finally, there's no one phase, two phase, three phase. Finally, it's just only the mind and the movement of the leg or the sensation of the leg, whether it's fast or slow, the mind can able to capture all of them. All the sensation, all the movement, it captures all of them. At that time, you don't have to worry whether you are first phase, second phase, or third phase. You can notice it every single thing. So that's why in the earlier part, I said sometimes people talk about 5 phases, 6 phase, 7 phase, 10 phase, 20 phases. As I said, you only want to remember the words only. 20 phases, you tell me which is the first one, which is the second one, which is the third one. I met one time, I met one Mahayana monk in back in Malaysia in Penang. We were somehow on the same airport, waiting for a flight. So we see monk, then say hello. So where are you going? I say I'm going to teach Vipassana meditation. Oh, Vipassana meditation. So how many steps of walking did you teach them? I say usually I teach them 3 phases only. 3 phases only. When I do 10 phases. Yeah, they say 10 phases. So he tried to tell me what are the 10 phases. Okay, then lifting, pushing, treading. Then he forgot already what are the name of the. Then what else? He start thinking. Then he cannot remember. So too, when you do this, you're more interested in the names of the faces rather than the observing what is going on. They thought that they do 10 faces, they are better than everybody else. They forget that the face is just what you think only. But in the beginning part, we need to tell you exactly how to do it. But when you go further into it, deeper into it, we drop whether it's one phase, two phase, we only see things as they really are. And then you truly that time, the mind is not distracted, you know exactly what is going on. So this is why the labeling, it's helpful in the beginning, but sooner or later, as you progress further, you need to slowly drop them. But not for now yet, Yeah? Don't be too to think you're a hero. You want to drop everything. No, not yet. You see that the mind is thinking so much. Then don't do that yet, especially for the beginners. So the labeling is so important for whether it's primary object or the secondary object. Now, when you take note of these secondary objects, like pain or sensation, pressure, and so on, the same principle is that you label it and at the same time you notice what is going on. Now, one of the thing with the pain that some of us are going through it, the difficulty of going the different types of pain. Now, when we deal with this pain, when we want to deal with this pain, firstly, make sure that you have done your walking meditation thoroughly. How much you can withstand and tolerate that pain is very much to do with how much you do with your third phase walking meditation, your slowest phase walking meditation, especially. It will be good that right now, the next day or then tomorrow or day for this one, you try to do your third phase a little bit longer, maybe up to 30 minutes or even up to 40 minutes, if your body can take it. If you cannot, reverse it back to two phase. Yeah? If you can, sustain it for 30-40 minutes. Yeah? That will be good for you. And then when you can do that, you find that you can tolerate the pain longer. Tolerating the pain is one thing, but again, what is more important is the observation of the pain itself. But observation without toleration also you cannot observe, isn't it? You need to be there with the pain without the mind goes into a lot of thinking, a lot of unpleasantness that's come in, the irritation, the anger that comes in. If all this restless mind, irritation comes in, your mind will not, that means you're not able to tolerate the pain anymore. Yeah? So what you should do is this: when the pain becomes the prominent, uh, numbing pain or pulling pain, then your job notice it as, if you can notice pulling, 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 or numbing, 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 numbing. Uh, or if you don't have the words for it, then just not pain, 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 pain. Or at the same time, you learn to be patient with it, noticing it, and at the same time, you observe how is the pain is like. Is the pain staying in one area? It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, or the pain is getting uh, moving from one area to another area. Then you observe it. Uh, you observe what is going on with the pain, and therefore you must not move the body. You must not move the leg. Stay there until the leg break. 1 hour, there won't be any problem. Don't worry. I never had a yogi, huh? After Bhante, because of you, I got to use, a walking stick already. No, I never. Because it's just only 1 hour, unless of course you already have injury. That that you don't do that. This one, huh? But if your leg is still okay, if you're sitting on the bed or sitting on the floor, then try not to move. Don't try a little bit of pain. Then you put the leg straight. Then here, then you put the leg straight. When are you going to note the pain? And the pain is one of the best object for the arousing of mindfulness. Like you want to play lottery, you put a little bit, you get. If let's say you win, you also win a little bit. You put a lot, when you get it, you're gonna win a lot. Pain also the same thing, and compared to other object, pain is a very strong, prominent object. You put your attention there. When you come out from the pain and noticing everything, and you go through that 1 hour until the best sound you will ever listen, that when the bell strike, that's the most relieving sound you can ever hear. Until then, you come out with it. That noting the pain becomes such a strong, such a strong arousing of mindfulness and sustaining of that mindfulness. So you watch that pain, you watch that how it pulls, how it changes from one pain to another pain, how it pulls, how it tightens, and so on. Yeah. Then you try to notice it as best as you can. Now, after some time, your irritation may comes in. You may not like the pain after a while. And when it doesn't comes in, you got to watch that mind. Dislike, 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 aversion, 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 thinking, 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 pain, 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 pulling, 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 numbing, dislike, 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 ting, ting, tang, tang. Then you go here and there, here and there. That is how you pay attention to it. Because the anger, the irritation, the dislike is connected with the pain. So you take note of those things until the hour up. Or you tell yourself, I'm not going to move until the bell rings. That's how we meditate. In the beginning part, I cannot meditate past through that 20 minutes. But every day, Give myself a little bit, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, push, 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 push. After 3, 4 weeks later, then I can sit 1 hour. Consistently, yeah. But in the beginning, all of us go through that. This is how we keep pushing, keep noting, 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 noting. Sometimes we fail, yes. Sometimes we may not able to do that. But I said, if you cannot do that, then mindfully we shift the leg. Mindfully we shift the leg, but that is only the last resort. You cannot, you throw in the towel already or white flag up. Yeah. Then that is the last resort. Other than that, try not to move, stay there and note it, because the pain is very useful for the development of mindfulness. Next time you find that now with noticing this pain, your mind becomes very firm, very strong. In the times to come, whenever there is difficulty comes in, your mind is more steady. That is some effects what you gain from just noting the pain, and it will help you in your everyday life. But the relationship may not be that clear. In the meantime, your job is make sure you note it carefully. So okay, for now, for today, we spoke about how to note these objects a bit more defined, more seeing it more carefully, whether it's prominent, primary or secondary. Sooner or later, also, primary and secondary are also concept, right? So sooner or later, this primary are also concept, because what you're going to see and notice inside there, it doesn't matter whether it's primary or secondary. Everything is obvious to you at that time. But in the beginning part, at least understanding it as primary, secondary can be very helpful. Okay, so we stop here for tonight. We'll continue the talk tomorrow.